everybody, how's it going? And welcome back to my beautiful, comfortable chair here that I now use as a computer chair because screw it, why not? Uh, I'm here, of course, today to talk about that movie right there, the movie that guy is from. That guy back there is Kylo Ren, and he is from a movie called Star Wars The Force Awakens. And of course, it's one of the biggest movies out right now. If you haven't heard of this, then what the hell is your problem? But I'm here today to do my impromptu review. I don't really have all of my equipment out of the garage yet, so I can't really do like a proper, well, I don't know if it's proper, but I can't really do like a review with a bunch of like graphics and all that stuff right now. So I'm just going to do a sit down kind of review. Sit down reviews are good too, and there's no problem with that. So let's talk about Star Wars The Force Awakens. I have seen it twice now. I saw it opening day and then I saw it on Christmas Day with my family. And I have to say, having seen it twice, it was actually more effective and affecting, maybe I should say. My grammar's not going to be good here, but whatever. It was more affecting the second time around than it was the first time. Which tells me something about this movie. It tells me that it has staying power. That it has the power to remain good and remain watchable and remain enjoyable and even to get better in a lot of ways as time goes on, as with repeated viewings. And that is a rare thing that you do not find with many movies. It's definitely something that you see in the Star Wars movies, which is like the one thing that I felt was very much a proper sign that this is absolutely a part of the Star Wars universe and that Star Wars is absolutely back now, you know. This isn't just somebody else's version of Star Wars. I mean, it is, but in a lot of ways, in that respect, where it very much feels like something that gets better with time and something that with repeated viewings gets better and better and more enjoyable. In that respect, it feels a lot like Star Wars did. And because of that, people are going to see the movie 2, 3, 4 times because that's what they did back in the 70s, man. That's what they did back when the first one came out because it was like a traditional blockbuster. Back in the day, what it meant to be a blockbuster was, well, busting the block, essentially. People lined up outside the theater for blocks in order to see this movie. But more so than that, and more so than that, more than just that, you know, rudimentary terminology, I should say, rudimentary understanding of the terminology. It was about movies that people went to see more than once, 2, 3, 4 times, and to give you a sense, like one of the first ones that I can think of was The Godfather. The Godfather came out in like 1972, and that one was a movie that was people kept going back to the theater because they had to, because they, in order to see it more than once, they had to go and see it in the theater. You know, they couldn't wait for a release on DVD or Blu-ray or VHS or anything like that. That didn't exist at the time. In 1972, that technology didn't exist. The only thing that you could do was actually to go to the theater. And if you liked the movie enough to see it several times, then you had to go to the theater several times to see it. And that's why back then, movies like The Godfather in particular, was in theaters for over a year, just to give you a sense of how that used to work. Star Wars probably won't be in theaters for a year. I doubt that very seriously. Star Wars The Force Awakens will not be in theaters for a year. It might be in theaters for 4, maybe 5 months, but a year is stretching it, not going to happen, you know, because they know that once the ticket sales dwindle, they can stop putting it out in theaters and they can start focusing on what they're going to do for their DVD and Blu-ray release. And that'll probably be one of the top selling Blu-rays, DVDs, or whatever of next year. So yeah, I mean, when it comes right down to it, this is absolutely very much the definition of a blockbuster, but it's also not the definition of a blockbuster because the idea of the blockbuster back then was that in order to see a movie several times, you had to actually go to the theater to see it several times. There's no impetus today. That's the difference between blockbuster then and a blockbuster now. Because a blockbuster now doesn't have that drive. It doesn't have that driving factor of you're not going to get to see this again for a while. Maybe you get lucky and it comes on TV at some point, but for the most part, you just have to go and see it this one time, or have to go and see it in this one way at theaters, and see it as many times as you can if you really like it, and then it's done. Like that was the way that movies were, watched back then. That's the way they were consumed back then. It's very hard for people to understand that in this day and age because it's just that doesn't exist anymore. We don't live in a world where that's even possible anymore. So that's what makes this kind of a blockbuster different, because this kind of a blockbuster, you can go and see it afterwards. You can rely on the fact that you're going to be able to get a DVD or Blu-ray or digital copy. You're going to be able to watch it again, and you don't have to go back to the theater in order to see it. So, when people are going back to the theater 2, 3, 4 times to see this movie, that's the same attitude that they had about movies back in the 70s when they couldn't rely on that kind of thing. So people are going to see this movie 2, 3, 4 times in the theater, knowing full well that they're more than likely going to be ending up buying this movie in physical form or digital form somewhere down the line, which honestly in a lot of ways is actually more powerful than what blockbusters used to be. When you can do that today, that's goddamn impressive, and it's a sign of where things are headed, and it's a sign that that the movie is very impressive, the movie is very good, and that it's got a huge fan base, a huge fan following that's not going to stop. I mean, we knew it was going to happen to begin with. I mean, if you're any kind of fan at all, or if you know anything about the franchise, then of course you know that it's going to be a hot seller in theaters. People have been hyping this movie up for the past year or two now, and I mean, duh. No fucking duh. It's going to be one of the hottest movies of the year. And it's going to continue being the hottest movie of the year when it comes out digital and DVD and Blu-ray and stuff. So, I guess when I think about that, it kind of adds a little something to it for me, because it makes it more of an experience, because it helps me to understand the history behind it, how this went from being a movie that was very much a part of the postmodern movement of New Hollywood back in the day in the 1970s. New Hollywood being a film movement wherein a lot of directors who normally wouldn't have gotten, or in this day and age, I guess you could say, would not be getting a lot of play, would not be getting a lot of opportunities to do movies. These directors were the movie studios didn't know what the audience wanted. They didn't know what the audience wanted anymore, because the audience wasn't going to see the big movies that they were putting out anymore. So they when they determined that they didn't know exactly what the people wanted anymore, and they figured out that all these independent movies were actually doing better than their own in a lot of ways, they said, well, okay, why don't we give some money to these independent directors? And I guess in a way you can kind of see some of that coming back again in the past 10 or so years, with a lot of small-time directors getting, bigger jobs, not big jobs, but 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, $40 million film projects to work on. So, it's in a lot of ways, it's very similar to what happened back then, but again, because the very fabric of how the movie going experience worked back then, because of how the very fabric of it was different in every possible way, it is therefore different today to consider. It's different today um, in how it functions and in how it works and in how we read what is happening, essentially. So it's interesting to see that growth over time, because it's like a lot of people think, well, this is just the same thing that it was back then. It's just as popular today as it was back then. No, what I'm here to tell you, it's actually about a billion times more popular today than it was back then. I mean, most people probably understand that, but I'm trying to like give a face to that and help you to understand that blockbusters in this day and age technically shouldn't fucking exist, because people know they can get this content in another way. They know that if they wait 3 months, 6 months, whatever, 9 months, a year, that they can get the content on digital. They can get the content. Some of the movies, some of the indie movies, you can get on digital the very same day that it comes out in theaters. But if you wait long enough, you can get digital. You can get DVD. You can get Blu-ray. You can watch it in a variety of different ways, and you don't have to rely on going to the theater to see it. So in this day and age, it's not important to go see things in the theater. Not like it was back then, where if you missed it in theaters, you probably weren't going to ever get to see it, or at least that was what they thought, because back then there was no such technology that would actually help you to see it, for a second time outside of the theater. So, with that understanding, I think it's important to note that Star Wars The Force Awakens is different in a lot of ways. It's different fundamentally in that respect. And I feel like that's important because while Star Wars A New Hope is undeniably a postmodern film, Star Wars The Force Awakens is what I would classify as a postmodern film, because we are officially, I mean, I don't think it's hard to, I mean, it's hard to deny at this point that we are officially in a postmodern era where we are now essentially like copying over what everyone else copied over back in the day. That's what's happening here with Star Wars in a lot of ways with The Force Awakens. And that's a lot of the thing that a lot of people are criticizing and saying they don't like, but the fact is, money don't lie, numbers don't lie. People going to the theater several different times to see a movie ain't a fucking lie. We're eating it all up because that's the era that we live in today. And some people they don't really feel the era that they live in. They feel like, well, I like an old soul, right? They feel like their soul was meant for a different time, and maybe it was, right? And maybe that's why some people don't like this kind of thing. But in a lot of respects, like I can understand why you wouldn't like the fact that this movie references in a lot of ways, not just in terms of like little uh, scenes here and there, not just in terms of the fact that you've got all the same characters, but and that they show all those popular characters from the original franchise, but also in the plot itself. In the plot itself, you see a lot of references as well to the original movie, to the way that it was, and all that stuff. It's very much a referential movie. It's very much a nostalgic movie, a movie that plays on nostalgia for Star Wars A New Hope. And a lot of people have been criticizing that, saying it goes too far with that, saying that there's too much of that in the movie, and it really feels to them like a carbon copy of A New Hope, to which I would say, bullshit. It's absolutely not a carbon copy. I mean, there are a lot of ways that it copies the plot undeniably from A New Hope, but that doesn't make it a it doesn't make it the same fucking movie. If you're looking at that and saying it's the same fucking movie, then you're not digging beneath the surface of the goddamn movie. You're not digging deep enough. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You need to watch it again. You need to actually read into the film, because film, believe it or not, you do have to read into movies in order to understand and contemplate what's going on sometimes. And in this case, that's absolutely what you have to do. And when you do that, you will get more out of it every time that you go to see it. Because there will be little things that you didn't pick up on at one point that you will pick up on later, and it will just make the experience much more enriching, much more meaningful. So, in that respect, I absolutely adore this movie, and I want to go see it again. And that is what makes this a different blockbuster in a lot of ways, too, is the fact that the reason you want to go back to see it over and over and over again is because it's one of these movies where you can actually get more from the experience when you do go to see it again, when you do see the movie more than once. And yes, you can wait and get that same experience when you get the DVD, Blu-ray, digital, whatever. But a lot of people are impatient and they want it now, 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 now. That's the society we live in. Now, 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 now. And the only way to get this now, 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 now is to go out to the theater and get it. And go out to the theater and watch the movie again. And I tell you what, it's worth it. It's worth it to see this as many times as you can in theaters, because, again, you're getting more out of the experience every time you go. I mean, every time I go, I get a little bit more choked up. I can't help it. It's just, I'm noticing little things here and there that are just, technically brilliant. Some things that aren't as good, that get a little bit more like, I get a little more critical of a few things here and there every time I watch it. But other things get better with age, to the point where they're so much better that, I by the end of the movie, I'm just like, yes, 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 more. So, yeah, I guess you could say that there are fewer moments that I feel like shouldn't be there and that I feel get more critical of over time, and more moments that I appreciate more over time in that movie. And that makes it a really good movie to watch several times. And that's the kind of thing that you have to do in order to make a blockbuster in this day and age, is to make a movie in such a way that you're putting things in there, little nuggets here and there, that reward people for watching it more than once. And that's exactly what they did here. And I love it for that. So, yeah, I have to say, this is a great movie. The first time I saw it, on the first day, I gave it an 8 out of 10. After a second repeated viewing, understanding now that it gets better with age, I have to give it a 9 out of 10, because it's just that fucking good. If you disagree with me, tell me why in the comments, but I'm probably gonna, try to shoot you down at least, because I honestly believe in exactly what I'm saying here. It's absolutely worth every dime that you spend on going to see it as many times as you can in the theaters. So, yeah, and I'll probably spend $20-$30, however much it's going to cost to get the Blu-ray when it comes out. Yeah. What did I tell you? I can ramble on about this movie without even getting involved in the plot details or anything like that, or any kind of spoiler whatsoever, and weave a pretty good review, can't I? Can't I? So yeah. If you want to see my spoiler-filled review where I start talking about all the plot details, then let me know, and maybe I'll think about doing that, but I haven't decided whether or not to do that yet, so I'm just, I'm abstaining as of this moment. So, yeah, just have to wait and see what comes of that. But anyways, thanks for watching. Catch you later. Peace.